Hi, my name is Hoda Sains. I'm in the Health Promotion PhD program. I won OGS.
I'm Xavier Borsato. I'm in the Health and Rehabilitation Sciences program, and my stream of study is health promotion. I was a recipient of OGS this year, or the Ontario Graduate Scholarship.
My name is Shireen Moderesi. I got the Ontario Graduate Award, the Graduate Scholarship, OGS, this year.
My name is Olivia Holmes, and I am in my second year of my master's studying health promotion. I was recently a recipient of a CGSM SHIRK scholarship.
I really focused on the lay abstract. I tried to make it as concise as possible and try to simplify the language as much as possible. I think it's really important. You can go on Google and use like a word thing that tells you how complex your paragraphs are. I think a lot of people struggle to get that into proper like layman's terms, especially if you're working on some complex like sciencey topics.
So there's a section on the application where you can put other circumstances. So I made sure that whoever was looking at my application knew why I had that gap and that I wasn't just being unproductive during that year. So it's important if you have any circumstances outside of academia that might have affected how your application might look, to say that so the reviewers know.
One of the more important things is impact. So I think it's important to have a section about impact of your research.
I'd asked for 2 references, and my supervisor had already offered to be one, which was kind of nice, probably because I knew her for some time. I know you typically want to know your references for a bit of time before. And then my other reference was a professor I was pretty close with in my 4th year of my undergrad.
My references were my supervisors. I have 2 supervisors, and I think the deciding factor is that they know me and they know my research topic, they know my CV.
I think it's really important to pick somebody who knows you as a person. So you've had a couple classes with, not just somebody you've only worked with, for a month. I think that can really make it so they can write a stronger reference letter for you, and somebody who's had a chance to see your academic ability. So
I think it's really important to have your supervisor as one of your references, because it might be a red flag if you don't have your own supervisor providing you for a reference.
I think the hardest thing about the research proposal is that it's only 1 page. And so at the beginning, you're kind of like, oh, okay, 1 page. It doesn't seem like a lot. It'll be easy. But there are so many different sections that you have to include. And like the CGSM outlines those, make sure you have a background, your hypothesis, your methods, and the significance.
I think you really need to hone in on your key aims and your key research questions, because that's really the center of your study, right? So if you just list those in the first couple sentences, but then never draw back to them, I think that's hard for the people who are judging the application to get a really good idea about what your project's about. So for me, it was really important to lock those research questions down.
In terms of timeline, in my experience, it's good to have the first draft of the proposal ready in 3 months in advance. So if it's due in January, then have the first draft ready at least 3 months in advance, and then go back to it every weekend and revise it every weekend. Because every time you read your proposal, there's something that you can still revise and there's something that you can make better.
Like I said, I found it was really important to start early, but I like to work on things a little bit every day. So today I'm going to finish these areas of my CCV, or today I'm going to finish the first draft of the lay abstract. And
I think it's important to start as soon as possible, especially with the references. So you want to get that out to your referees as soon as possible.
November was kind of where I actually began, okay, now is the time to log into the system, start inputting that information slowly. So
right.
By the time December 1st comes, I've already had multiple drafts written. I have everything I need in there. I talked to my references. They got their stuff in way ahead of time.
I think there's a couple different factors with your application and publications. I think publications can definitely be really beneficial to your application if you have done research before that's publishable, but I don't think they're necessary. Like on my application, I didn't have any publications. Make up for lacking publications in other areas of your application. I think especially with the Master's Awards, they recognize that a lot of students are just kind of getting their feet wet in this type of academic work. So I don't think they expect you to have published like 6 different papers in a bunch of different journals.
Try to collaborate with other people in your lab, and then try to collaborate with other people in other labs.
Publications are important, but they're not the end all and be all. They're just part of the academic picture of who you are.
Grades give a really good insight into kind of your work ethic and how dedicated you are and kind of who you are as a student. If you don't have publications, I would say higher grades are going to be more of a benefit because it's going to fill in that gap to the adjudicators for what kind of work you're capable of doing.
So academic excellence, I think, was worth 50% of their grading system, I guess we could say. So it's definitely pretty important thing extra you can add in there. So, scholarships or awards, things that you can kind of do to up your academic excellence in that way. Well, the award money is always nice. I think that's a huge draw for a lot of people. And I think really what it's meant to do is kind of allow you to just focus more time on your research. So maybe you don't need to work a second job or something outside of school. You have that extra income, which is nice. And then I feel like I have more time to dedicate to writing.
Most straightforward thing was it covers all my honorariums and fees for, like, I'm using Quirkos for doing my qualitative analysis. So it covered the fee for the license for that. And then it's also cut back. I don't need to particularly work a whole lot this year with the OGS funding. And I can put more time into it without having to worry about a lot of financial things in the background. So I think in that sense, it really just allowed me to concentrate on my work. Submitted to that with my preliminary kind of draft of everything, and actually gave some really good feedback about my CV, which was nice. It had some interesting points on my research proposal and my lay abstract that kind of helped me figure out where I needed to focus more of my attention.
It didn't actually take long, I think.
Good.
If I remember correctly.
Each time I applied for OGS, both in my master's and the couple of times that I did OGS and got awarded OGS in my PhD, I always gave it to my supervisors to look over, because your proposal is a work that you're doing with them. So it's also important that they see what you're putting forth.
There are sections in the CV where they allow you to write a description and kind of describe what it is that you did. And I think a lot of the times people like to describe the duties that they had, the role that they played. But I kind of shifted my descriptions a little differently to talk about, the impact that I had for, a specific volunteer organization. So if I volunteered with them, I didn't just describe the role I did. I kind of focused on the impact I had.
I think it really depends on what you've done.
Right.
For me, I've done a lot of volunteer work. I do a lot of work with Mothers Against Drunk Driving and some other organizations. So those sections were my larger sections, and I went into a lot of detail about that. Some other areas like publications and stuff like that, I didn't really have a lot to put. So I think the key thing with proportions is if you have an area that's lacking, try and make up with it in other areas, but don't put in things that you're reaching for that aren't necessarily applicable, because it's going to dilute the quality. So just
I'm glad you asked that question, because I have been unsuccessful in the past.
Right.
Many times. So it's important to not give up So
Mhm.
don't think that your research is not interesting enough or it's not good enough. It's important not to give up and get feedback.
Just keep in mind that each year is different. Each year the number changes, each year the competition changes.
I think to really focus on your research proposal, because I think the proposal is probably the thing that makes or breaks most people's application, because that's what they really want to see, right? Like, why should we fund your research?
I definitely think you have to use the resources that are available for you. So, you know, some of us coming here and most of us are pretty independent as grad students. But this is something that you don't really want to do just on your own. And, you know, even if it hurts you a little bit to get someone, you know, review and provide you with some constructive feedback, it might be hard for you to take, but it's so worth it having that second eye go over your stuff. I know I always thought it was perfect the first draft around, and when you get someone else to look at it, it's like, oh, I didn't even think about that. You know, they can give you new suggestions. So
Just to summarize, start early, get feedback from as many people as you can, and not just people that are in your area of specialization.
Right.
And don't give up. If you don't get it one year, it doesn't matter. It doesn't necessarily mean that you won't get it next year. You can
Yeah, for sure.
strengthen your application.